Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Investor Lab, the auditory epicenter for passionate people seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. And joining me today, I had a great young guest, and his name is Andre Weller. I say young, but he's about the same age as me, so that was a little bit weird and funny. In any case, he's got a very interesting story that I think a lot of you will resonate with, or certainly at least appreciate hearing. See, he came from a bit of a challenging background, grew up in a fairly low socioeconomic area, but has managed to, build a two-property portfolio, one of which is actually overseas. So he's actually become an international investor. Now, he's battling an industry which is in decline, and he's had to overcome all of these challenges to get to where he is today. Now, I think that this is a really interesting story for a lot of people to listen to because it can show you how it doesn't matter if you have a big gap in your property journey, but it just matters that you stay focused on the end goal. Now, he's on track to, achieve a level of financial independence, which means that he doesn't need to work in a pretty short period of time. And I think he's got a lot of really interesting insights, particularly around where he grew up, the mistakes he made with the first investment, and how you can kind of overcome those challenges as well. So I think this is going to be a super interesting podcast, and make sure you check it out. Now, of course, this is part of our Investor Stories series. And if you are interested in sharing your story on this podcast, I would love to hear from you. So just send me an email at hello@dashdot.com.au. Let me know you'd like to be on the show. We've got a small application form, and we can share your story too. The goal with these stories is to help share the stories of real investors so that we can all grow and learn from each other's experiences and become better investors along the way. And if you've got a story that you'd like to share, and it could be the challenges you faced, and also it doesn't just have to be the successes either, then I'm sure other people would love to hear it too. So let me know. And in the meantime, let's get stuck into it. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. Hey guys, welcome back to the Investor Lab. Joining me today is Andre Weller. He's a 32-year-old butcher from Darwin. He's actually not from Darwin, but he's currently in Darwin. Right now, as we record it, I'm a bit of an early bird, as many of you guys may know. It's currently 6 a.m. where I am, but it's 4:30 a.m. where Andre is. So he's definitely going to be the first cab off the rank for today. But Andre, welcome to the show.
Yeah, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. So this whole series, or this addition to the podcast, is really designed about sharing investor stories, investors like you who have kind of tried different things and learned a bunch of lessons and done a bunch of stuff along the way. And so I'm really excited to dig into your personal story and find out a little bit more about you and, what your portfolio looks like. And we'll kind of pick it apart and kind of see what lessons you've learned that other people can learn to help them take action. How does that sound?
Sure, sounds awesome.
Awesome. So, mate, why don't you give us a little bit of an insight into a bit of your backstory is probably a good place to start, because I know that you didn't start living in Darwin. You're actually from Adelaide. Is that right?
Yeah, from Adelaide. So grew up in the south of Adelaide, Morpeth Vale. I'm the eldest of 5 kids. Yeah, so I went to school down there. Went to school down Morpeth Vale and Seaview. I was a bit of a troubled kid, I guess. Going through high school and that sort of stuff. Didn't really do that well.
Yeah.
Not because I didn't try, just because I didn't really put the effort in, kind of thing. I wasn't smart.
Can I ask why didn't you? Why I was sort of similar in a way. So what caught your attention? If you had the intellect, but not the application, what caught your interest instead? Because typically people who don't do well in school do well in other areas. So what was it for you?
I was pretty social, you know what I
mean? You excelled in the social area. Great.
Yeah, so my thing was actually, English and all that sort of stuff. I was really good at English. I actually thought I'd probably be a journalist or something like that.
Yeah.
Butchery was way off the Richter. I didn't think I'd even become a butcher. So I left home at 17, got kicked out. Just because I was, a bad kid, I guess you might say. That's what Dad reckoned. But
a little too social, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe, Yeah.
Yeah.
So I left at 17. And I'm like, well, what do? I'm like, there's no way I'm going to go to uni and all that sort of stuff and work a part-time job and fund myself through that. I'm like, bugger that. May as well just go get an apprenticeship. So I looked at anything that I liked, and food was pretty much came up first. It was going to be a chef, baker, or butcher. And I looked at butchery. I'm like, that seems probably the easiest because you're kind of like on the first front. You give the meat to somebody, they cook it, all good. If you're cooking for someone, you're right there when they eat it. So if it's no good, they're going to come back at you. Yeah.
It's a little bit of risk mitigation then.
Yeah, and like butchers I always met when I was a kid. You go to the butcher shop and they be all nice, you know, so they seem like good blokes, like have a bit of a laugh. So well, just give that a go, you know.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
So then I started at Woolworths as I was 17 in an apprenticeship, and I saw that they had an option to go up to places like Darwin, anywhere remote. They pay you extra money. So that was my goal coming from 17 and walked in there. I'm like, okay, that's where I want to go because I'm going to get paid more money. Because my whole idea was, I knew when I walked into the space, the manager said that I won't have a job in 10 years. So I was all about trying to make that money and put it into something. And
why did they say you wouldn't have a job in 10 years?
Well, Woolworths, like the supermarkets always go on pre-pack and stuff like that. There's always talk about the butchers getting taken out. So, you know, they said like within the company, you won't have a job kind of thing. So that propelled me to just try and make money.
Okay.
And put it into assets.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I want to ask a little bit about that. So you grew up in Morphett Vale, which, you know, interestingly is actually performing pretty well as a property market now. But typically has actually been a bit of a lower socio kind of area. You grew up at a bit of a troubled childhood. You got kicked out of home, left school, all of that kind of stuff, and found your way into butchery. What actually inspired you to start investing? Because investing in real estate is actually not something that most people do. And honestly, like a lot of people kind of view it as something that, you know, only people who have come from good backgrounds or have good jobs or have plenty of money get into. What actually inspired you to do that? Who were you surrounding yourself with to inspire that kind of action? I'm very curious.
I was quite lucky with my my grandparents. So my nana, she was extremely frugal. She's a single mum for a long time, and she owned her own house, and she just talked about the benefits of getting into real estate. Like she wasn't really in real estate. I knew she bought a house and she'd paid it off. She worked hard. I was really lucky. I was brought up around really hardworking people. So she was really big on it, just talking about, and for them it was more about owning a house, paying it off, having that security. You know what I mean? And my opa as well. So my opa and oma, that's my dad's side. They're from the Netherlands. My oma would always say that she wishes that my opa bought a house because they always just rented, but he had a business and that's how he made his cash flow. She said, because if we bought a house back, you know, when they came to Australia, they would have obviously gone up in value and all that sort of stuff, you know. Yeah. But my opa was too scared because the idea in Europe, a lot of places people just rent. They don't want to get into property. It's kind of like somebody else's thing. So, and I was always interested in money and saving and all that sort of stuff as I was growing up. Why do you think do you think you just got, what actually sparked that interest? A lot of people don't get interested in money. I mean, I can speak personally. I wasn't that interested in hanging on to money for a very long period of time. Like I was a little social too. So I'm curious what actually triggered that at such an early age. I think it's security. You know what I mean? Because I didn't feel secure a lot of time. We had a lot of things going on when I was growing up, a lot of insecurity, and I knew that money just made you secure. I didn't know what the actual goal was. You know, I wanted to buy a house and all that sort of stuff. Maybe rent out houses and stuff like that. It's kind of like, I think my idea was to get passive income. I didn't actually understand the idea of passive income at that time, but that's what was the thinking, you know.
Yeah, okay.
And maybe a bit of ego too, I guess, you know.
Yeah, okay, cool. So
I wanted to be a bit of a boss, you know.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so how old were you when you bought your first investment property?
21. That was a home, but so my idea was to buy that home and then get placed in a job, say in Darwin or Broome. Broome was actually where I went to. And I would get paid rent and all that sort of stuff up there. And then I would rent that out. And then I was going to pay that off. That was the strategy. That was the idea at 21. But I didn't actually buy it. Like I looked at the house. I paid way over market for it because I was coming from where you're renting houses as a young kid. The way I would get a house is like, okay, the house is rented at 250. I'm going to give you 280. You know, bang, and that's just how I thought it worked.
Okay, so right? that was the basis of your offer. That was the basis of how you put in an offer. Is that right?
Yeah, like as a renter. Say if there was 250 a week, I'd say I'll give you $280 a week, just so because I was young, I was only like 18 or something, 19. Okay. I was looking for houses. You had like 20 people go and look at a house. They're all, you know, people with good incomes, all that kind of stuff. And I was an apprentice butcher, you know.
Yeah.
So then I thought that kind of carried over to property. I didn't really think about how much maintenance is going to be needed on this property, you know what? So I looked at it from a homeowner's point of view.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, oh well, it's on the market for 280. I'll offer him 287, so I get the house, even though I didn't know if there's anybody else bidding or whatever. Just bid straight out. They're like, boom, yep. Okay. And I way overpaid for that house.
Okay. How do you know that you overpaid for it?
Well, it still hasn't gone up. You know, it's like
really?
it actually went down. Like it went down to 260,000. Over the last 5 years, we had a bit of an issue there. It's in a bit of a lower socio point of Morphevale. So Morphevale's kind of low socio. I don't know about now, and it's actually in a lower point in that space, if you know what I mean. So hasn't moved at all.
Interesting.
Rents out well, but has not moved. So I think it's like valued at maybe 290 now, and that's with everything going up, right? With all the COVID stuff, you know.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so you bought the first home at 21. You bought it as a home, knowing you were going to eventually move out of it and rent it out.
Yeah, and so then kind of like an investment, but not really. I didn't really do the sums. I didn't do the, you know what I mean. Like if I could do it again, I'd change the strategy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's dig into this a little bit. So you bought the first property at 21. What's happened since then? What other properties have you added to your portfolio? What's happened there?
Since then, like not a lot really happened. So I was kind of like, so what I did, I moved away, and my idea was to put all my money into paying that off.
Yeah.
Right. And I moved my family in there, which was great to give my family a place to stay. But obviously that comes with complications, and that put some strain on my family relationship for a while, you know what I mean? So, I rented it under market and all that sort of stuff, but we sorted that out, which is good. And then I was able to rent it out to another lot of people, paying good rent and all that sort of stuff. You know, we had a few issues with them not paying rent, but it sorted itself out. So I was up in Broome, working my ass off, you know, really, really hard. And a butcher I was working with, he goes, "What do you do on the weekends?" I'm like, "Nothing," you know, because I'm just plowing all my money into the mortgage. He goes, "Why would you do that?" And I'm like, "Because you're 21, you should be out having fun, you know, pull back, save the money, and try and put it into some other kind of investments, you know." Which was actually a good strategy, because you can obviously, it's going to help you with tax advantages and all that sort of stuff, rather than paying it straight down.
Yeah.
And I was able to experience life, and I went traveling and all that sort of stuff. So pretty much traveling, just saving money, and I put money back into the house in things that probably I shouldn't have. You know what I mean? I overcapitalized and stuff, like, you know, I probably could have made a whole new house with all the coin that I whacked in there, you know, and it hasn't really done much to the property, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay,
so,
cool. And do you have any more properties in your property portfolio?
Well, I just closed on a couple of duplexes in the US, so that's what I've been saving for. So I met my wife in Broome in 2013.
Yep.
And then we got made redundant in Broome. So it's just kind of like, now it's starting to happen, you know, these redundancies and losing your job and all that sort of stuff are starting to kind of happen.
Okay.
We got made redundant, and then there was no job for me, kind of thing. So I took a year off and went to live in Korea.
Yeah.
For about 7 months, because my Opa got sick. And so I was going to be there for a year, but he got sick. So I came home early and just did some more work on the house.
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff. Got it rent ready again, and then rented it back out. So then I spent heaps of money on that year off. You know what I mean? I got paid, because I pretty much saved on my annual leave, and I got paid pretty much per week on a per weekly basis. But so I spent heaps of money on that year off. We traveled around Southeast Asia and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've come back, spent a heap of money on getting it rent ready, so just a bit of cosmetics and stuff. And then I moved up to Darwin, got another job with Woolies as a manager up here. And then my idea was, I was quite scared of property actually at that point, so I was just saving money.
Why were you scared of property?
Just because, like, I just kind of thought that I stuffed it up. You know, I mean, just like whacked heaps of money into it. Now I look at the value of the property, and it didn't go anywhere. It was renting fine, you know, but it was like, I refinanced out of it as well. So that's kind of like, so now I'm still quite highly leveraged. But my idea was just to save money on the outside of that. I was putting into mutual funds and all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to get a bit of a war chest, and then actually go into private property. Instead of, I could have just paid off the property. My actual property, I could have paid it off, but I just thought that wasn't really worth it.
Okay, so what made you start investing in the US? Why'd you choose that as it?
So my mum actually lives in Michigan. So she moved to Michigan in 2002, And I went there in 2012, and obviously I saw the devastation, how bad it was in Detroit, all that sort of stuff. And I actually thought that was a bit of an opportunity, I thought,
What made you see that as an opportunity when other people would probably have seen it as a bit of a non-opportunity, I would suggest.
yeah, like I don't know, it's like maybe I just believe that cities just don't crumble. You know what I mean? Like they'll come back in some way. I didn't know where the opportunity was exactly, but I'm like, the US has an opportunity. I'm like, house prices are just ridiculously low. But obviously I was kind of like too young at that point, didn't really have enough coin. But my idea was to just restart researching on how to do it, read books and all that sort of stuff, trying to rack my head around it,
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, and so that's settling. So you've got a duplex in Detroit, which is settling. So I'm very interested, right? Because it seems like you bought a property at 21, right? And you started your apprenticeship at 17. You bought a property at 21. You didn't. You're 32 now, going on 33 now. So you bought that duplex. Assumingly you bought presumably
Last year.
yeah. You bought that duplex last year. So there's a big gap there.
Mm-hmm.
So what lessons have you learned? That's a big gap where as
Massive,
you said, you were sort of like, okay, you pulled back from property, you're a little bit scared about it. Now you've decided to go back into it. So what's the strategy? Have you thought about your strategy, or what's the goal? What's changed now, and what are you trying to do with it?
So yes, obviously I wanted to go in with more money, if you know what I mean, and have probably a bit less leverage, not have to worry if something goes wrong. You know what I mean? That was kind of my idea. Yeah. And just for cash flow over in the US, I pretty much thought that's a cash flow point, and I'll just invest over there for cash flow without using loans and stuff like that if I don't need to.
Yeah.
And then obviously I want to grow that to about $10,000 US, and then I actually want to start investing here as well. In property as well, but with obviously I'll have cash flow there, and obviously I can use cash flow maybe in appreciation here.
Yeah,
it's kind of my idea.
So now that duplex is now settled, and is that producing an income now?
It's still in renovation because we got hit with COVID and all that sort of stuff, so we've had a few issues. Yep. But that's been quite a challenge actually, but it's been pretty good. Just to learn to go through this situation, and if I can come out the other side, then I'll be pretty happy. You know what I mean?
For sure. Okay, so now you got the duplex in Detroit or in Michigan, and you've got the single family home. We'll call it in. I'm only using that terminology because now you're
USA.
Now you're investing in the US. We've got to define those types of things. You got a single family home in Morford Vale. Okay, mm-hmm. So what's the plan now? Like you say, you're going to start using some of that cash flow to invest back here. Where are you trying to go with this portfolio? What's the goal?
So the goal is obviously just I want stability. So I want, because my expenses on a low end are about $5,000 a month, $6,000 a month. That's living pretty frugal.
Yeah.
I want to obviously take over that, and produce about 12,000. That's the idea. I'm still trying to learning about Australia. You know what I mean? I'm still learning. All I'm trying to do is just learn about exactly what happens in investing in Australia. I feel I'm a little bit scared of, about how much money you need, how much leverage you need. You know what I mean? But I know I could have probably put that money into a few properties here. That obviously comes into your head too. So that's the idea. So my idea is to keep saving on this side as well, and then start pushing that into properties and grow that.
And how long do you think it's going to take to get to that goal? We'll call it $12,000 a month. That's kind of what you said. Yeah. How long do you think it's going to take you to get to that goal?
Probably about 5 years, I'm guessing.
Really? That's
because you just don't know. Like obviously you'd love it to be quicker. You know what I mean? But there's going to be bumps along the way. There's already been a ton of bumps.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing about that. Maybe a bit longer. Could be 10 years. As long as I'm getting some positive cash flow and I kind of replace my own income, that's kind of where I'm going from. Because, my job is just going like this. You know what I mean? It's becoming more and more redundant, which, I can get another job, but I am getting older. I did actually try getting another job and I got knocked back for every job that I applied for because I just don't have any experience.
Too old,
mate. Just like pretty much flip burgers and been a butcher. That's pretty much what I've done,
Interesting. Okay, cool. So what where you say you're doing a lot of learning and you're bringing you're gaining you're trying to educate yourself. Where are you getting information from? What's like? Have you been reading books? How have you been seeking out the information that you need?
Pretty much on the internet, so podcasts. So I just found out about podcasts last year.
Nice.
And I was like, what the hell is this? I was just like, shit, I could do the cleaning and listen to stuff that I'm interested in. So obviously, Bigger Pockets for the US.
Yeah,
is a big one. It's like the biggest social network for property investors in the US.
Yeah,
we've got so much information, like it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Here I listen to your podcast, listen to Invest Story.
Yeah.
Reading books. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read that a long time ago. Yeah. That's just about mindset, really. It's mainly about the mindset, and like the mechanics just kind of come as you go. You learn it. You learn about mechanics pretty easy. But it's about getting that positivity going, because I've had a lot of issues in the last year, especially with work and all that sort of stuff. But I was trying to, and that almost broke me, the situation I've been through in the last year. But just trying to keep pushing ahead is the main thing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of where I'm at.
And so when you look at your journey today, what's the biggest challenge? You said you've faced some challenges this year. I'm assuming that's with work and all of that kind of stuff. But what's the biggest challenge you've had to face specifically in your property investing journey? What's the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome? Is it just the mindset piece, or?
It was like I actually went too hard. So I had a budget, and the missus said, just stick to your budget and we'll be all right. I'm like, yeah, okay. But then I went way over the budget. I went all in.
On the property in Detroit?
Yeah, I went in the properties there. So I would like to have like a reserve of maybe 60 grand, just in cash. But I took that out. I'm like, I'll go hard, then I'll save that up pretty quickly, because we're quite good savers. We can save $5,000 to $6,000 a month or whatever. Yeah, like that'll be fine. And then all the issues with work started happening last year. I'm like, oh shit, Yeah. That was the main thing, just going too hard and not having a reserve. That was pretty much like the biggest hurdle. So now I was just like, just stick to your budget, honestly, and stick to reserve. Yeah, that was probably my biggest hurdle. Like, it wasn't about not getting it done, because I know I can get things done. Yeah, it's just being like looking after yourself first before your goals, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
And what would you if you had your time again? What would you have done differently?
I probably would have invested in more property in Australia as I was living. As I was working in Broome, you know what I mean? I probably would have, because I could have easily, I was saving down payments for houses probably within 6 months, or more. I could have had, I don't know, maybe 8 by now.
Interesting.
If you know what I mean. That's probably one of my biggest things. And I probably wouldn't buy that first property. I probably would have listened to my nana. She said, maybe buy something close to the city. You know what I mean? Which probably would have done better. I could have.
Okay, so if you had done that, like, where would you let me ask you this: where are you thinking about buying now? Like, now that you're going, okay, I probably should have bought more in Australia. I've kind of got a duplex in the US. That's going to produce some cash flow. Happy days, all good. But now you're kind of turning your lens back to Australia. What's the kind of, like, how will you go about deciding what would make a good investment now? Because you've only got the one in Morphett Vale and it hasn't gone that well. So how would you go about trying to find a property in Australia now?
So I'm still obviously for the US, I'm still looking for properties over there, but I'm obviously want to look here as well. Yeah. So actually, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty keen on employing people, say as buyers agents and stuff like that, to help me out with the process. Right. As in like finding like markets and sub-markets. That's probably something I'm not that great at, to be honest. Yeah. Is really doing the research on exactly where is a really well performing. Like, I know how to do research on sort of stuff on areas, but I like to have someone who I can soundboard off. I think it's right. I think that's really, a buyer's agent is really quite imperative. Work quite is needed, I think. Really. So Adelaide, obviously Adelaide's coming up in a bit. It's quite surprising. Adelaide's it's just a stable market. Just certain places in Adelaide, which are really sweet. I've heard Perth's probably on the upswing next year. Yeah. But I'd probably speak to buyer's agent and bounce ideas off of them.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
Cool.
I don't mind forking out a little bit of money to have someone help you out. You know.
Oh, I mean, how would your life be different now if you'd taken that view back when you were 21?
Yeah, it was just I didn't know about it. You know, that's the thing. There was no education on that sort of stuff. I didn't even hear about it. You know, my lens was like work.
Yeah.
You know, save.
And so, if you were to speak to someone that resonated with your story, like maybe someone who's 17, 18, 19, 20, or alternatively someone who's around in their early 30s and kind of in a similar position, going, all right, hang on a second, what am I doing here, and how am I gonna make the best of this? What kind of advice would you have to somebody else? What guidance would you be able to share to help other people avoid the same mistakes?
Probably educate yourself early. You know, as soon as if you're keen on something like this, just start reading about it. You know, one of the biggest things, and obviously don't give up. You know what I mean? You know, you can stuff up and then keep going. You know what I mean? That's probably the biggest thing. And just think about reserves, because there's something I just never. Obviously, I like having money in the bank, but think about your life and how much it costs you for a year. Maybe have that in reserve, or 6 months, whatever, depending on your industry. Yeah, you know.
How do you work that out? Like, how do you think about reserves for your properties? How do you think about reserves for your life?
So I think about my life. I know how much it costs at this given point. It's about $50,000 to $60,000 a year, give or take. But that's mortgages and stuff like that, which the rents pay for. The rents pay for the mortgages and stuff like that. But I add that still as an expense to me, because you never know when that property is going to go vacant. You always have to know about that vacancy. So like if you're looking at a investment property, probably your mortgage for 6 months, you know, at least. And then depending if you don't think you can sort out your own life, then maybe your lifestyle for 6 months or something like that, you know. So I've lumped it all together. Yeah. And I know that my life costs about $5,000. That's living frugally though, you know.
Yeah. So no, totally. So let's just say, okay, so you basically said 6 months of mortgage repayment as a bit of a buffer for your properties and 6 months of living expenses, right? So you're basically using that. How do you think that might change if you had, like, I don't know, let's say 10 properties? Do you think you would try and have 6 months worth of buffer for each property?
Nah. Obviously not. I would think like maybe 10 grand a property, depending on where it's at in maintenance and all that sort of stuff. You have to think about maintenance. You could do it even like in percentages. You could take out, say you get your cash flow and you can take out 10, you can put away 10% for maintenance, all that sort of stuff over the years, you know? Yeah. Or, you know, I would think, so if you have like an older property, I'll be putting more onto it. So I probably might have 10 grand property or $5,000 a property. It just depends. I'm not at that stage. So I think, anything that could cover some losses. And if you're making positive cash flow from certain properties, then you can obviously use that to cover up other properties as well if something goes vacant, you know.
Totally. So you pointed out something really interesting there. You said that your cost of living is around about, let's just say, $50,000-$60,000 a year. So if you get to $5,000 net cash flow a month, is that kind of your FI number, your financial independence number?
Somewhat, yeah, I would say so. That's like living quite frugally though. You know, I don't want to obviously be like, we live in an okay lifestyle, you know what I mean? But
yeah, I mean, it's financial.
That's like your first,
financial indendependence, not financial obesity, right?
Yeah, like your first like little knockout, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like if I lost my job, okay, it's not so terrible. Yeah, about $5,000, you know. Yeah, maybe even less, you know, if you could live more frugally if you wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure. But $5,000 would be a nice round number. Yeah, you know, cool, man. And it's actually probably less than that, because I don't add in so I add up my positives and my negatives, but I don't really put all the positives into the negatives. If you know what I mean, I don't cancel them all out. Okay. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I get it. And so you said at the start you've got you're the oldest of 5, is that right? Yeah. Have any of your other siblings or any of your other family members taken an interest in property as well?
Not really, to be honest.
And what are you doing to try and help to inspire them and to encourage them?
So my brother's a business owner. He owns Born Barbers Barbershop in Glandore in Adelaide there.
Good plug, by the way.
I was thinking whether I could work it in there or not.
Yeah, nice.
So he's pretty big. He's quite a good entrepreneur in the actual fact of being an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Like, he's quite good at business and all that sort of stuff. He actually did buy a property with his ex-partner.
Yeah.
And that didn't go so well. They had to sell it, I think, at a loss. I'm pretty sure.
Where was that? Out of curiosity.
In Morphell as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously, I speak to them about what I'm kind of doing and stuff like that. It's kind of hard really to really encourage, because they've seen me go through some ups and downs,
Yeah.
So I always just talk about it, talk about like maybe we could do things together and all that sort of stuff, you know what I mean? Like about budgets and all that sort of stuff, how they work out their own budgets and so like, is there any surplus that we could use for that?
Yeah.
That's kind of like, I'm probably one of those boring people that, like my mates and all that sort of stuff, all I ever talk about is about finances and things like that. So I've probably lost heaps of friends because of it.
Do you ever find that challenging socially? I tend to find one of the common things that when I talk to a lot of people that there's typically a lot of the time there'll be one kind of member of the friendship circle, typically the person I'm speaking to, that has a real interest in like finance and property and stuff like that, and the rest of their mates are just like, dude, what are you talking about? Shut up.
Yeah.
Do you ever find that? How's that affected your kind of social life?
I think with our generation, I don't know, I'm 32. I guess you're probably
33.
Similar age. Yeah, there you go. We're all pretty open to it. I feel like a lot of my mates and all that sort of stuff, especially from where I've come from, we're all pretty big on trying to push forward and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? It's some people get annoyed with it, I guess. You know what I mean? But I think people are pretty open to it in the circles that I know. You know what I mean? Like everyone that I grew up with, they're all pretty big on buying property and all that sort of stuff. So it's
awesome.
Hasn't really been too much of an issue. It's probably about new people, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I guess like, oh yeah, here's Andre again. He's probably going to talk about this again, I guess. But a lot of people are really interested and I'm interested to learn what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, especially a lot of mates that do business and all that sort of stuff, which is something I'm not keen on. I'm not keen on starting businesses and stuff like that. I'm more like, invest in something. We'll start businesses that have already been done. So property, that's a business that's been done and tried. You know what I mean? So it's got blueprints and stuff like that, which are easy to watch and follow and learn about. Whereas starting a business is kind of harder, I feel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like starting a business from scratch is
intense,
It is intense. It's very intense. But no, fair enough. But it's good that you mentioned you think about property investing like a business as well. That's definitely the best way to be thinking about it. So. For
sure. And I didn't think about it. Actually, that's probably a good thing to talk about, because I didn't think of it as a business when I first started. I didn't know. I didn't know what it was about. Like I'd pay it off. That's a little bit of security. That's all I thought about. I didn't really think of it as, you can put systems in place and all this sort of stuff. I didn't really think about it.
Yeah. I think it's one of the bigger mistakes that people make when they start investing is they think about it abstractly as houses, and they don't think.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They don't think about it as businesses which you're buying that are they're in the businesses selling an accommodation solution, and whether or not you get the right business in the right area that meets the right market demand, that you're going to have a successful business or not. Because I can tell you, if you go and start a I don't know, maybe you start a barber shop in Cooper Pedy, maybe it's not going to go quite.
Maybe it doesn't work. That's right. It doesn't work.
But if you get it in the right place and it's got the right product market fit, then you're going to go pretty well. So no, that's good. Cool, man. Sweet. Well, I've really enjoyed digging into a bit of your story and learning. I think it's fascinating that the very first step that you've taken after quite a big gap, we'll call it nearly basically an 8-year
decade,
pretty much 10-year gap. The first step you took was to invest in the US, but I'm excited to hear about you investing back in Australia. I'd love to stay connected and to see how that journey progresses and check in a little while. How's that sound?
For sure. That would be sweet. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. Great. Have you got any final thoughts or final messages you want to share with anybody else before we wrap it up?
Nah. I think we're pretty sweet.
Awesome. Cool,
I'd
man.
just like to say thanks to my wife, thanks to the family, just for dealing with me, I guess. You know what I mean? And thanks to you for having me on. It's been pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, man. Nice one. Cool. Well, thanks again for your time, and we'll see you soon. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks a lot, mate. See you later.